I pray. I pray, but I'm still struggling. Does God hear me? I tithe religiously, but I'm still struggling. Does God hear me? And then I read this book and realized maybe I wasn't listening.
Contrary wins. For those who want to give up but need to know, greater is coming. Buy now on He Did Not Forget Me.
All right, here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Hip Hop Center podcast. Sitting across from me is my co-host.
What up, y'all? It's your man Sam Ant, CEO of Viral Hip Hop News. You're in the building for a special edition of the Hip Hop Center podcast. We got a special guest back in the building for round number 3.
Yeah,
I believe the good brother Gregg, Marcel Dixon's on the podcast. What's going on, family? How you feeling?
I'm doing well. How y'all?
doing great, brother.
Definitely. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for always being gracious enough to, reply to our phone calls, reply to our messages, and always be gracious enough to bless the platform, man. Yeah. So let's get right to it. It's a lot going on in the world. It's a lot going on in the political world. Obviously, we do this every couple of years or so. Understatement is correct. Hey, man, do you think? What's your thoughts about? Let's start with, because this is so much we could break down. Let's start with Biden. Him, him receiving his nomination for presidential electee. Now we got Kamala Harris in as the Democratic nominee from what it appears to be. What's your overall thoughts about what's going on right now?
At first, I did not think he was going to, end his campaign for re-election. He was really, really out there campaigning, and I'm absolutely not a Biden fan at all, but I could not believe it. But with James Clyburn here in South Carolina, the man against whom I'm running, who's the incumbent, when he said that he would support an open primary, then I said, okay, they're talking about something behind the scenes. Now, what I find interesting is that he stepped aside, but he did it via a letter, and he has yet to do a press conference. At some point, you would have thought a speech of that magnitude, he would have delivered that via a press conference, or at least from the Oval Office in the White House. Like, he has not been seen at all. So that to me is quite interesting. As far as Kamala Harris goes, she may be the nominee. At first, Nancy Pelosi did not endorse her, but she did as of a few minutes ago. Obama has not yet come out to endorse her. Chuck Schumer has not yet come out to endorse her. Those three, even though Obama does not currently hold an elected position, but those three are kind of the ones who dictate how the direction of the party. And it's going to have a convention. I'm curious to see if they're going to have an open primary or not, or they're just going to, have Kamala be their person that they're going to put up to run against Trump. And if they do, she has been polling lower than Biden. But, polls are just a snapshot of the responses of the people you ask. I'm not a Kamala supporter either. Let me be very clear. I'm just speaking objectively that she has been polling lower than Biden, but we shall see.
It's funny because if you look at perception in the black community, black Twitter, as they call it, black Instagram, you would think she's the next best thing since Jesus Christ. Like, she's going to beat Trump. She raised all this money. Charlemagne the God, D.L. Hughley, all these people are going nuts right now. All these memes all over the place. I know everybody has to see it. So you mean to tell me that she is lower than Biden right now? Actually,
they just released a poll, and yes, she's polling lower than Biden was polling against Trump. Biden and Trump would sometimes switch positions where Trump will be in the lead and Biden will be in the lead. As of this poll, it's just one that is doing a hypothetical if Kamala was to be the nominee. Yes, she's polling lower. And what you're seeing is a lot of symbolism. First of all, I don't get it. Kamala is not a freedman, meaning she's not a Black American who's a descendant of those who were enslaved and emancipated in America. Some people are even arguing if she's Black. Now, I don't argue that, but some people do. But we have this symbolism where you have some Black women who are excited about seeing another Black woman who may be able to ascend to the office of the presidency. I guess we have not learned our lesson from Obama. We need more than symbolism. Now, I'm willing to give Kamala a chance. I want to hear some policies. Let's talk policy, okay? But the reason I'm a little suspicious of Kamala, because one big issue for me, and this has been since day one when I launched my campaign, and it's always been an issue for me, is mass immigration. Our country is literally being invaded at the border. And whereas we see our people struggle, whether you are a freeman, a Black American, or you are the descendant of a Black immigrant, you was born in America, we see our people struggle day in and day out. I have not seen a homeless illegal immigrant at all. I've seen them being put up in hotels, being given debit cards to purchase food, getting free clothing, healthcare, transportation, job training for well-paying jobs that we were told we need to go to school to get special training, certifications, and degrees, and yet they are bypassing that for illegal immigrants, giving them job training and having well-paying jobs waiting for them. Kamala, even though she was not the president, this has happened underneath her administration. Underneath her administration, they have sent billions of dollars to some cities that are struggling to accommodate these illegal immigrants. That is something that really turns me off. I am for stopping mass immigration, illegal, but also out of control legal immigration. I want to hear what Kamala is going to say about that. Of course, we got to have that reparations conversation. So I'm willing to hear from Kamala and see what she has to say. I don't think we should close the door off if she becomes the nominee. But I'm not going to get excited because she has some melanin in her skin. This is a woman whose mother was Indian and whose father was of mixed race, Jamaican heritage, or is, because he's still alive. So some people are really falling for symbolism. I will never do that. Even if she was a freeman, that's still not enough to get my vote or my support.
We in the Black community have been falling for symbolism when it comes to these elections since we were alive. It's always been about symbolism. It's never really been about policy. We've never gotten to the nuts and bolts. And now with the advancement of the media and social media, it seems like a lot of our entertainers, a lot of our media personalities, they really try to force that and nail that in of the perception, and us kind of looking at the perception as opposed to really sticking to the policy. Why do you think that is? We talk about often a lot of these, in particular, Black media incumbents and Black media entertainers getting paid off by the Democratic Party. Just call it for what we see it. What do you think of the reasoning? Because I seen Ebro this morning. He dropped on Twitter, you got a woman that may be Indian and Black. I consider her as Black, and against this white man who wants strictly white policies. They try to split it. They try to make it so much about race when it comes to these elections and play on the minds of Black folk. Why do you think that is?
One, we have been so discriminated against systemically in this country. Those of us who are freemen, whose ancestors have been here from day one to now, we have been so locked out of positions that would not exist without us. Abraham Lincoln said, without the Black freedmen, the Union would have fallen. And yet, even after slavery ended, we went through 100 years of horror. The GI Bill that paid for 15 million white veterans to enter the middle class, made them homeowners, helped them become automobile owners, gave them pensions, gave them six-figure salaries because it helped them get into the professions. My great-grandfather is a World War II veteran. He's still alive. He just turned 100. He was locked out of the GI Bill. Homestead Act. That's the Homestead Act of 1862. There were several Homestead Acts that gave land mainly to white men, but eventually white women too. The Homestead Act of 1862 gave away $10 trillion worth of land from 1862 to 1976. We were locked out of that. They did a Southern Homestead Act that was supposed to go to us. We were locked out of that. The New Deal, Labor Union Act, Social Security Act. Of course, Jim Crow saw us locked out of opportunities for education, for professions. Of course, people always focus on how we were denied our right to vote in large part in the South. We were also denied the right to run for office. So now we see some Black faces who are ascending to these positions that were once locked off from us, and we get a sense of pride. We live vicariously through them. But we have to stop being so emotional when it comes to politics. Politics is not something that should be done based off of emotion. It should be done based off of logic and what is best for my demographic. I am not mad. If there's a white American man in middle America, the Midwest, and he wants to know how are you going to benefit me, white Americans who are in the Midwest that probably live in the steel mill areas, what are you going to do for us, or the former coal mining areas? They have a right to ask that. That's smart. You look out for your own self-interest. What you don't do is try to harm other Americans who have a right to look out for their own self-interest too. You can look out for your own self-interest without harming others. We need to get like that. We need to start saying, okay, wait a minute. What are you going to do specifically for my people? We have to stop being so emotional.
Well said.
So is it fair to say that, because when you hear Trump talking, he talks often about shutting the borders down and how all these illegal criminal immigrants come over here, and then you see it, quote unquote, black jobs, they're taking black jobs. So it just stands more so with Trump in the aspect of immigration.
Oh, yes. I'm further to the right than Trump. Oh, not only, no, we don't need to just close the border down. We need to do mass deportation. Now, people often say, well, how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? I'm not buying that. This is a country that kept tens of millions of Black Americans enslaved first, but then when Jim Crow came along, they kept tens of millions of us underneath the thumb of Jim Crow. Even though the North did not really have Jim Crow and the West did not have Jim Crow, my great-grandmother who moved to New York City in the late 1920s, early 1930s, I can't remember exactly, she told me that there were the same type of discrimination in New York City and Philadelphia that she experienced in Beaufort, South Carolina, and in Savannah, Georgia. Okay? So if this country was able to systemically oppress us, it is not oppressing someone by letting them know you are here illegally, you gotta go. You don't necessarily have to even send ICE agents after them. What you have to do is go after the corporations that are hiring them, because that's really the cost of this matter. Corporations want cheap labor. They don't want to pay Americans a fair wage, especially Black Americans, American freedmen. And you got politicians who see that we are waking up. This whole reparations thing is really taking off. Just 4 or 5 years ago, this would have been a topic people would have laughed you out the room if you mentioned. Now it's something that's being mentioned, and politicians, even Trump, had to address it. We're demanding specific policies for our status, the freedmen. We want all the Black community to be helped, but we are also saying that not all Black people are the same, and Black Americans who are descendants of the emancipated, we have a special status. You could look up the Freedmen's Bureau. You can look at the Freedmen's Bank that did in the 1800s. We are the freedmen. We're still here. What are you going to do for us? Because we are still owed the wealth that was stolen from us in this nation, that was denied to us. Now that that's happening, you got the Democrats who want to import a new voter base. So in places like California, Maryland, and D.C., they're giving people in the country illegally the right to vote. Think about it, y'all. We have the least amount of wealth in this nation.
Yes, sir.
Our land, we lost 90% of our land, 15 million acres, really was stolen. Our wealth is going backwards. There's been a few bumps every now and then under Trump, even under Biden, but for the most part, it's still going backwards. Our home ownership rates are around the same as it was during Jim Crow. It gets a little higher, but it's still where it was during Jim Crow, when it was legal to discriminate against us. And we have the right to vote right now. If we're not getting anything for our vote right now, what's going to happen when they try to give tens of millions of illegal immigrants who send money back to their nations, who have no loyalty to this nation? Definitely they don't care about us. A lot of them come here hating us. Do you think they're going to vote for our interests? Do you think they're going to vote to help us? They're going to vote and mobilize against us. So me wanting to protect the borders is something that any proud American should want, but it's looking out and protecting our interests. We already have enough bigotry we deal with. A study in Duke University in North Carolina and South Carolina, 63% of Mexican Americans, well, they were illegal, Mexicans who were illegally in the country, said that Black Americans were troublemakers, criminals, were not good neighbors, did not work hard. 63% of the ones that were interviewed. We already have enough bigotry that we deal with. We don't need to add to the numbers of people against whom we have to fight.
Ooh. You spoke on you agreeing with Trump's policy as it pertained to immigration. What are your overall thoughts about Donald Trump in general, and what was your thoughts about the assassination attempt last week?
The assassination attempt, I'm gonna go backward. That was kind of weird. I mean, I saw the videos. Like, okay, supposedly this guy brought a ladder to climb on top of the building. Like, who does that? And people were saying to the police, "Hey, someone's on top of the building. That's not normal. Hey, they're getting in position." And the police were like, "Oh, yeah, that's kind of weird." That was kind of weird. So I'm not going to say, look, if anyone has a right to be a conspiracy theorist in this nation, it's us. Because what has this nation not done to us? From the crack epidemic, and before that, the heroin epidemic, to the chain gangs, the debtors prison. mass incarceration, we literally had a person who worked for Richard Nixon saying that they knew Black Americans were not importing crack in America, were not abusing crack in large numbers, but they had to associate us with the heroin and crack addiction so they can lock us up and target us. So if anyone should be unapologetic about thinking that things are not what they seem, it should be us. If it was just incompetence, the incompetence was extremely glaring. They're having a hearing right now as we speak about what took place. But I'm not going to rule out that there was something nefarious behind the scenes that took place. The ball was just dropped, and it was just a little too glaring for me to believe that there was not something more taking place. And as far as how I feel about Trump, the only thing where I align with Trump right now is the mass immigration stance, because that's going to hurt us. I don't understand why some of us, because we've been hurt so bad in this country, we've been through so much terror, we want to sympathize with other groups. I sympathize with other people who are suffering. Let me be very clear. But if you can risk life and limb to get here, you can risk life and limb to fix up your own nation. That's number one. Number two, a lot of these people that come here hate us. I was watching a video in Chicago. It was this migrant, that's what we're calling them now, right? At a town hearing in Chicago. Our people were talking about how the city of Chicago is spending billions of dollars housing illegal immigrants, and Black Americans are freezing on the streets. It was this Mexican guy, could barely speak English, saying how we were lazy and no more money for you. In California, the largest civil lawsuit in Californian history are Black Americans, freedmen, descendants of the emancipated, suing their Hispanic colleagues who terrorized them on the job. Look at affirmative action. Affirmative action was not helping the descendants of the emancipated for whom it was meant for. It was supposed to be for the descendants of people who were enslaved and emancipated and went through government sanction, because we're talking about what the government did, not what white people did, but the government. Let's keep the focus on the government for what the government did. Affirmative action was supposed to make up for all the years the government denied us access to things we should have had. Who has mobilized to bring it down? A lot of Asian Americans. You saw a lot of them saying affirmative action is hurting them. Now that affirmative action has fallen, now they're still saying they're not getting into the schools where they want to have access. But they were blaming us. Look at historically, when the Irish and Italians came here, the European, Germans and Anglo-Saxons did not like the Irish and Italians. What did a lot of the Irish and Italians do? They launched some of the worst race riots against us in American history. The draft riots in New York City. That was a lot of Irish immigrants attacking innocent Black Americans. Look at some of the riots in Chicago. A lot of Irish and Italian immigrants. There has not been any group of immigrants that have come to this nation and have largely sided with us. They always mobilize against us. So I am looking out for us. I'm not saying that there are not immigrants who are for us, or people who are the children of immigrants who are for us. Yes, there are. But I'm saying by and large, people who come here illegally, it's not just because they are wrong to come here illegally and other people are paying money to do it the right way. It's also that a lot of times they come in with open hostility towards us, and they get resources that we don't get. That's not their fault. That's the government fault. But we have to be self-interested. Outside of that, Trump ain't really offering nothing. I'll explain why I don't hate him as much as I used to. Right. Because when Ice Cube asks who wants to come up with policies for Black Americans, and he reached out to the Biden campaign and the Trump campaign, it was the Trump campaign that right away responded to him and came up with the Platinum Plan. Now, the Platinum Plan does not go far enough at all, but that's where my hatred towards Trump started to subside.
If you could explain for people just a little bit, what's the difference for the ignorant people between Democrat and Republican? If you kind of just give us like a brief history and explain that to people, because it just seems like Black people, just like my parents, their parents, they were just Democrat. So why are Black people so many Democrats, and what's the difference between the two, if you can just briefly?
Well, let me tell you what's funny. If you go back long enough, we were once loyal Republicans.
Right.
Black Americans were once loyal Republicans, but they betrayed us. In 1877, they did the Great Compromise. They pulled the military out the South, and they watched us get massacred. They watched us fall into sharecropping. They watched Jim Crow take control. So first, the Republicans betrayed us. I guess now it's the Democrats' turn. One point, the Republicans got most of our votes, and they did nothing for us. For the past 60 years, the Democrats have been getting 90% of the black vote. That doesn't mean 90% of us are voting for them. Let me be clear. That doesn't mean 90% of us voting for them. Over 50% on any given election, a lot of black Americans are not voting at all. Same with white Americans and any other group. But when we do vote, 90% of the time, our votes goes to the Democratic Party. So we are the most loyal constituency they have, and yet we are to the bottom in every measure of society. And you know what really bothers me? When we blame ourselves for our conditions. There is no group in America, and please let me say this, because I read some of the comments when y'all post my videos, and I hear a lot of people say, well, we can just, do for self. Do for self. That's all we've been doing in this country. Who else has done for us? No one. We've been doing for self for centuries. But white Americans didn't do for self. They got land. They got homes. They got policies that put them ahead of everyone else. These Afghani refugees, they're getting lands, homes, money, schooling, healthcare. Chinese Americans, they got paid for their work on the railroad. And when the Cold War started and America wanted Asian countries to not become communist, they started giving the Japanese the auto industry. They gave the South Koreans the hair care industry. We didn't give up on it. America took it from us and gave it to them. Illegal immigrants are not even Americans. Look at the trillions of dollars they're getting to house them, clothe them, feed them, educate them. No group has done for self in America besides us. But we should not have to do for self. We vote for the Democrats more loyally than any other group, and they get our votes. The Republicans are awful. Yes, they are. But they're not getting our votes. The Democrats are. And I hate it when I criticize the Democrats and people say, well, you want the Republicans to win? Maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe that's what needs to happen. Because if you make me a cheeseburger, or McDonald's makes me a cheeseburger, and my cheeseburger comes out undercooked, I'm not going to go across the street to Wendy's and say to Wendy's, hey, what's going on with my cheeseburger? They're going to say I'm a fool. I'm going to go to McDonald's. So the Democrats don't get to fail us, have us to the bottom, while they do for all these other groups. And when we go at them and say, you got our votes, they say, well, what about the Republicans? No, the party that gets the vote is the party that should be accountable. You get the vote, you get the accountability. So the difference is we don't vote for the Republicans. So they're not thinking about us. We vote for the Democrats, and they're not thinking about us either. And that's the problem.
Wow. I want real quick. I want to just ask this question and add on, because I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about the immigration thing and Trump. And he was saying, I'm going to get your opinion on this, that these immigrants come over here and do the jobs that we don't want to do. What's your thoughts on that?
There's no data to support that. When people say that to me, I say, show me the data. Show me the study you did that shows Americans don't want to do this job. But check this out. I'm a teacher, right? I've been teaching for almost 20 years. I don't want to teach, but I do it. And my students do very well. I'm an award-winning teacher. I'm proud. If anybody, I do surveys with my students, and I'm very strict, unforgivingly strict. I mean, I have fun with my kids. My kids know, and I teach upper elementary, middle school, I teach high school. And all my students, no whatever age, Mr. Dixon ain't taking no stuff from you now. But I don't want to teach, but when I go there, I do my job, right? I also work as a security analyst. I'm trying to get into cybersecurity. I actually enjoy it, but how many of us want to work? A lot of us don't, but we still do it, right? So it doesn't matter if Americans want to do it. I'm sure those illegal immigrants don't want to be in those hot fields, because that's what everybody says they're doing, picking fruit, but they do it. Americans will do any job if we are paid fairly. The problem is that we don't want to do the work, is that we are not going to do the work for slave wages. Every single industry in this country, the majority of it is done by actual Americans. And the few industries like agriculture, where illegal immigrants are the majority, Americans still make up 46% of the employees. So there is no job that Americans will not do, but there is a wage for which we will not work. And one of the reasons why the wages drop so much is because of illegal immigration. Coretta Scott King. We all love Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but we need to remember Coretta Scott King. She was just instrumental. In the 1990s, Coretta Scott King wrote a letter to Congress, and she said she was against mass immigration. She said if you let more immigrants in, they will bring wages down. You know who else said that? Frederick Douglass, W.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, Barbara Jordan, So our civil rights leaders, they all realize the harm that immigration does to the Black American community. This is not about hatred of other people. This is about love of ourselves. And I'm not going to apologize for me loving my people. Every other group's looking for their own interests. We need to do the same.
I'm going to talk a little psychiatry real quick, because you talked about how the housing rate for Black Americans is pretty much no different than it was during the Jim Crow era. You talked about some of our scholars and civil rights people back 40, 50 years ago, still talking about issues that we still deal with today on a worse level. We deal with in a day and age where information is given to us at a vast number, at a vast speed. There's no excuse for us as Black people to allow the Democratic Party to continue to do this to us, yet we do. Yet Kamala Harris is still all over social media. You see Black folk anything but Trump is the hashtag. They don't give a damn who it is on the other side. Anything but Trump. And that's what's being promoted to us. Why do you think as a people we continue to still be mentally manipulated right to our face and do nothing about it?
Fair. There are some powerful motivators. Love, lust, sexual desire. But you know what's powerful? Anger, hatred, and fear. Those are some of those powerful motivators in human society. So fear-mongering. Let me be very clear. The Republicans are to blame. You know, the Democrats are racist and anti-Black American too. They very well are. But the Democrats aren't going to call us the N-word. Not really. The Democrats aren't usually going to be outwardly bigoted. Their form of racism is making sure we get nothing. You see, I always say when the Republicans are in power, the Republicans ain't going to do nothing for nobody besides the corporations and the military. When the Democrats are in power, the Democrats are going to do something for everybody except us. And that's the thing, fair. So when you got the Republican Party, right, for example, I hate Joe Biden. People are afraid of Trump. Do people not know Joe Biden's history? Trump was in office for 4 years, an elected official for 4 years. Biden's been elected official for 50. If our lives were going to get better with Biden, he had 50 years to do it, and it did not. But while Biden was in office, he worked with segregationists to keep Black kids out of schools. Now, we can all discuss whether busing was a good idea or not, but the fact of the matter is he worked with Storm Thurmond, who was a bigot here from South Carolina, Byrd and Easton and all these Ku Klux Klan and segregationists. He called them not just their mentors, but his friends. Biden also introduced the disparity with crack. The form most used by Black people, throw them in prison. The form used by white people, decriminalize it, give them help. In the crime bill, we talk about the crime bill of 1994. We had the crime bill of 86 and 92. Put more Black people in bondage, and this is the days of slavery, even for minor crimes. A lot of it was minor crimes. Yeah. That doesn't scare us. It's almost as if we feel it's an honor to suffer underneath a Democrat. So we have this thing with FAIR. Now they got this thing called Project 2025. Yeah. That's really a proposal from this foundation called the Heritage Foundation or whatnot. It's not something that Trump is really even connected to. But you got the Republican Party that makes it hard for people to even look at them. When you got them embracing outward bigotry. But the Democrats do the same thing. Remember, Malcolm X said the liberal, which is usually more on the Democratic side, he said the liberal has mastered the art of appearing to be the Negro's friend. So the Democrats know how to kind of keep their anti-Black American hatred very subtle. Republicans are just outwardly with it. So people often wonder, well, what do we do then? What's up between a rock and a hard place? You know who's the solution? Look in the mirror. We are the solution. Right after slavery ended, the first thing we did outside of looking for relatives, we ran for office. I'm here in South Carolina. The first non-white person and the first Black person to get elected to Congress, Joseph Rainey, right here from South Carolina. Then we had Robert Smalls, Mississippi, Louisiana, All these southern states were sending black people to Congress in droves. South Carolina had a majority black state legislature. Our ancestors didn't wait around for a good white person to come along so they can vote for them, or even a good black person. They said they would be the person that will do right by their people. They will be the person that will run for office. Like you said, this is 2024. If our ancestors could do this in the 1800s, we can do it now. I'm a candidate, a very, very grassroots candidate. I'm truly grassroots. And yet I've been able to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars just being an inexperienced teacher who said, I'm not going to just stand back and complain about the problem, people in office ignoring us. I'm going to run for office and actually take action to solve the problem. Now, I'm running against Clyburn, a man who has tens of millions of dollars. People will donate to him. So am I making enough to actually, mount a machine like he has? No. But if I can do that, just me, imagine what all of us can do if nationwide we start mobilizing and organizing. So it's fair. But if we want to look to people going to do for us, it's us.
Now, as far as a lot of people saying Kamala Harris is going to be attacked for her crime record as Attorney General in California, some people will say, well, it's a system. She was just doing her job. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, she was doing her job, but if you ran for office, you have to look out for your constituents, yes. But if you are going to be proudly and, running your blackness, if you want to argue that she's black, so we'll argue that she's not. But let's say she is. You're going to run for office and you are going to, use your blackness as a political tool to help garner votes. Then that blackness should have meant something to you when you were in office to begin with. So she can't just say that's the system. She should have said, hell with the system. Our people, which Kamala Harris is not of our same lineage, but she could have said that as black people, we have always, in America, we've always fought against the system. We've always fought to change the system. We never just went along with the system. If we went along with the system, we would still be on plantations right now, or we would still be somewhere in a sharecropping right now. We've always said if the system is wrong, then we are going to make it to the system where it needs to be. So if that's the excuse she's using, that's a pathetic excuse. Now, I haven't looked up much of her background. Of course, I've seen it, but I kind of refrain from saying one way or the other. I remember when Tulsi Gabbard, during that debate, went in on all the things she did as Attorney General. And if that's true, that's despicable. But she can't use that. It was just the system at the time. No, if you are in a position of power and the system is crooked, then you stand up and say, I'm going to fight to change the system or make it into one that's going to be equitable, especially if you're going to use your blackness as a political, promotional tool to garner votes and support.
It from what it looks like now, I mean, it's not officially official, but from what it looks like from the outside looking, it does look like she's going to be the Democratic nominee for the presidency in 2024. And we already see the layout of what's going on with black media and black athletes. They're going to really push for her heavy. And I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. It's just the reality. They're going to push for her heavy. Do you see a situation realistically where she can beat Donald Trump in November?
I mean, if you're running for office, there's always a chance, right? What I'm afraid is going to happen, you see the Republicans, let me tell you, I'm in South Carolina. I think with a lot of white conservatives, a lot of white conservatives. Some are far right. And let me tell you, I've given speeches at American Patriot rallies. It's usually a mixture of like the very conservative whites and like very pro-Trump people. I've gotten standing ovations from them. And I talk about reparations. I talk about how this government owes my people. I talk about how we built this country. You would think I'm the last person they will give a standing ovation to, but they do. I don't go there tap dancing or raccooning for them. I'm not going to do that. So the point I'm making is, instead of the Republicans actually trying to appeal to us with policies, they actually do this stupid thing where they embrace the lowest of the low, the scum among their constituency. For example, right now they're attacking Kamala Harris based on her sexual history. I don't care who she slept with. I mean, that's irrelevant.
Word.
They don't want to go there because you start looking at all the history of these people on the Republican side, or any politicians, the Democratic side, you will see a lot of them have skeletons in their closet. Let's contest Kamala Harris with policies. That's one thing we have to give Trump credit for. He actually tries to make overtures to the black community. Now, is he doing it? Is he necessarily coming to us with policy that goes as far as I would like him to go? No, not at all. But I even speak with someone from Trump's team. I speak with someone from RFK Jr.'s team. I'm willing to even speak with someone, if it ever happens, from Kamala's team if she becomes the nominee. But there's definitely a chance. And with the Republicans, it's Trump's race to lose. I don't think if Trump does lose, I don't think he will lose because of anything he does. I think he's going to lose because he has a lot of racist, bigoted supporters, and he kind of gets guilty by association. And right now, instead of them trying to challenge Kamala Harris with policies about what they're going to do for people, they're going to probably resort to some of the most bigoted, disgusting, sexist things they can imagine, and they may turn off people who would otherwise have supported them. I don't know if those people are going to vote for Kamala, but I think it's going to cause people to stay home. The Democrats already have people on their side who are going to stay home, and it's going to cause the same thing with some people who were looking at the Republicans, because that nastiness, that hatefulness, it turns people off, and rightfully so.
Now, the white woman's vote, which is obviously important here, they didn't vote for Hillary Clinton like that. Do you think any chance them voting for Kamala Harris? Because you really can't sway them with the whole race thing. The woman thing, maybe. Do you see white women showing up to vote for Kamala Harris?
If they didn't show up to vote for Hillary Clinton, a fellow white woman,
right,
who was not Hillary Clinton, is not necessarily a liberal. I mean, she was during their center and kind of center right. If they didn't show up to vote for Hillary Clinton, that segment of the white woman population, I seriously doubt they will vote for Kamala. The only thing that might be a factor, a wild card, is this whole thing with abortion. Now, everybody knows I'm against elective abortion, but there are some white conservative women who do feel it's a woman's choice. It doesn't mean they like abortion, but they still feel it should be a woman's choice. I've talked to white liberal women. I'm very much against elective abortion. I feel that 20 million aborted black babies is a damn genocide. Right now, our population is 50 to 52 million. Well, the census undercounts us, so I'm pretty sure it's more than that, because the census admits that we have been undercounted by at least 3 to 4%, but the census undercounts their own undercount. Because see, in 2010, they said they undercounted us by 800,000, and when it really came out, they had undercounted us by 4 million. So the census undercounts their undercount. But imagine we had 20 million additional people. Politics is a numbers game, and we should not be decimating or stagnating our numbers or slowing it down. However, I have talked to a lot of white liberal women and people who support, I guess, who are pro-choice, and a lot of them say they don't necessarily like abortion. They just don't feel the government should interfere. They talk like people on the right talk, and the people on the right who support pro-choice say the same thing. So that could be a factor, but I doubt you're going to sway white women who had disdain for Hillary Clinton to vote for Kamala Harris, especially if race is a factor. I mean, like I said, some people are arguing that Kamala is not even a black, but maybe in the eyes of certain white women, she's close enough to it for them, and that's going to probably be a turned off factor. But like I said, if she's running for office, there's always a chance she can win. And the Republicans, leave it to them to embrace bigotry and nastiness is going to turn people off. And like I said, Trump, you can kind of tell he's trying to move in a more disciplined manner, but unfortunately, some of his loudest supporters are some of the nastiest, most bigoted people, and they just turn people off. Hell, it turns me off a lot of times. Yeah. But I'm trying not to let emotions get involved and think policy.
Do you think that, because I'm about to go at us a little bit kind of heavy, because we often, as a people, collectively as a people, we really ride off of emotion. Do you think that how we're perceived in society, in particular how hip hop looks at us, how our culture is perceived via these airways, and how society looks at us, that's the reason why immigrants look at us like we're nothing? That's the reason why people think they can come in this country and step all over us. That's why Americans don't really take us seriously. Because you talked about how you were at that, how you do speeches, and primarily you talk to a lot of people that are on the far right, but you get standing ovations as a proud black man, educated black man, knows what he's talking about, but unapologetic about his people. There's a respect level that could come to that. Do you think because how we're perceived and how we're promoted out here, we're not taken seriously, or that's why maybe people look at us like we're the bottom of the totem pole? Why do you think that dynamic is so drastic? Because collectively we're looked at bad, but there's millions and millions of real good educated Black people out here that could really, do some shit if we really collectively came together. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, let me say, I speak to everyone. I've got standing ovations at not necessarily liberals, because the liberals can't stand me. I can't stand them either. But I've spoken like very Democratic loyalist crowds, and I've gotten standing ovations for them too. When you stand your ground, even if people don't like you, if you are authentic, people will typically respect you at least, even if they can't stand your guts. I don't think that's the reason, because first of all, you got everyone trying to claim hip hop. I mean, you got people talk about some Latinos and Hispanics created hip hop or were instrumental hip hop's creation. No, they weren't. You got people saying Caribbean people's instrumental hip hop's creation. No, they weren't. Our people were breakdancing in the 1800s on the plantations, were rapping in the 1920s and the 1930s here in the deep South states. So people love hip hop. But when hip hop is in news for something that's negative, then all of a sudden it becomes a Black thing. When hip hop is on the world stages and getting all that praise, everybody wants to claim it. Russians want to claim it. But when it's being, slandered in the media, all of a sudden, oh, that's those Blacks over there. Those Black Americans. You see, they don't have no culture. They're degenerate. Also, look at how they portray the African continent. I've been to 6 African nations. They show Africa as a hinterland, a wasteland, filled with HIV and all kinds of other diseases. People are illiterate. Things are underdeveloped. That's how they show Africa. Right. Now, it's a big continent with a variety, with like 54 countries. Some areas are very developed. Some areas are not. I've been to 6 nations, I can tell you. However, a lot of us know that's not the way that African continent really is. I mean, you may have some issues in some areas, but you cannot just blanket the whole continent. We don't, at least a lot of us, we don't run around portraying a lot of Africans that way. We use the internet that we have now to do research for ourselves. So there may be some ignorant people who don't. But my thing, it's not an excuse for anyone to be ignorant, especially you coming to that person's country. I have something to say. If you think Black Americans are so ignorant and we're to the bottom of the totem pole, don't come to a country that has Black Americans. Stay in your nation and build your nation up. Because my thing, you coming to our country. I'm not going to yours. So who really should be looked at? Or who really should be looked down upon? And yet I don't look down upon anyone. So no, that's not an excuse at all, because we can look at how they show other nations. They show other nations in the American media sometimes in horrific ways. And that's not an excuse for any of us to look at people from those nations as less than. Latin America, Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, El Salvador, Guatemala, which I love Guatemala. I've been there. I love the beautiful country, beautiful people. Honduras, I've been to Brazil, been to Colombia. Those are fantastic countries. But those countries have some of the highest homicide rates in the world. I mean, insane murder rates. Wow. Do I look at all those people as murderers and killers? No. South Africa has some of the highest rates of rape in the world, so high that they created a vaginal condom that has little razor teeth because women are getting raped so bad over there. Do I look at South Africa as all rapists? Absolutely not. No, I don't. If you look at Europe has been the most war-torn continent in history. World War I was just really a big European tribal war that ended up killing tens of millions of people. Then they outdid themselves with World War II. Before that, they was having feudal wars all the time. Do I dare say Europeans are war-loving criminals? No, I don't. Look at pedophilia. White men account for 90-95% of all people arrested for pedophilia in America. Do I ever look at white men in America and say they're pedophiles? No, that's disgusting. I would never do that. So we're not about to play this game where just because we got a few people like Sexy Red, people showing this degenerate stuff in the media, that somehow represents all of us, and that's an excuse for you to look down upon me. Absolutely not. I'm not going to tolerate it. And even if one of our people's not well educated, not well spoken, a person's worth, a person's intellect is not dictated by the degrees or how well-read they are. I meet many people who have not had a lot of opportunities. Heck, I haven't had a lot of opportunities because me being in South Carolina was just one of the poorest states, and it's just unfortunately the way it is in America. That's a whole other conversation. But I meet plenty of people who have not had a lot of opportunities, and I've learned a lot from them. These people have great insight. These are good people. So no, that's absolutely not an excuse. People look down upon us because that's just the American way. Remember, during slavery, They had to make us seem less than human to try to justify American slavery. During Jim Crow, they would do minstrel shows with black faces, making us seem as if we were barbarians so they can justify lynching us. They can justify racial massacres. They're doing the same thing today. That's why even though FBI data, less than 1% of black people any given year commit a violent crime. That's FBI facts. I dare someone to prove me wrong. Less than 1% of black people commit a violent crime any given year. But if you look at the news, you'll think we was all just running around raping, killing, robbing. Yeah. They also don't talk about how black people, especially black men, 55 to 70% of the people wrongly arrested and wrongly convicted are black people, and especially black men. No one talks about that. So this is all social programming that America has always done to try to treat us in a dehumanizing manner.
Killed that.
Yeah, powerful. I know you got a prior engagement you got to get to. So I'll open the floor up if you got anything else to say about Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and let people know they can find you as well.
I just want to say that Kamala Harris, people always pronounce her name different ways. I don't know how it's really pronounced. I want to say that I don't like Kamala Harris because of her attachment to this administration. But I think, if she's going to come talking some policies for freedmen, I'm willing to have that conversation. I don't think it's wise to close the door off to any candidate. I made a tweet saying that black men, it's okay for this election. It's okay to be the villain. You should see all the people call me bullet bags and, oh, you stupid. I don't want to say the word. You stupid N-word. You see, that's going to stop. That's how they talk to black men. They don't talk to Asian men that way. They don't talk to Asian women that way. They don't talk to whatever race they are, Hispanic people that way. You know they ain't going to talk to a white man or a white woman that way. The only group in this country that people feel okay disrespecting are black men, but they think we're supposed to come out and ally with them. Right. I'm going to say that we need to vote for our own interests. Other groups do it, nothing for us to do it. I want to say to my people, it's okay for us to demand more. The government has done for every other group while the government did against us. Other groups got paid for what the government did to them. We haven't. We're owed the most. Damn it, demand it. Organize voting blocks. Organize to get candidates running for office. Organize to support that candidate that's running for office. Organize to form PACs that are going to buy lobbyists. We have to be civically engaged. We have black faces in high places, and they're not doing us any good. So we have to be the people. And it doesn't have to be a black person either. Right. We don't need to look at the politician's race. Look at the politician's policy. You can find me at marcelforcongress.com. I love what y'all doing. We need our own media to help get our message out there because these people we got now, the Joy Reids and stuff like that, they may have their moments, but by and large, they are not doing it. They're not talking to actual people on the ground.
Salute Marcel Dixon.
Gregg
So Marcel Dixon on the Hip Hop Offensive Podcast. Follow Marcel for Congress on Twitter as well. Powerful platform. Yeah. Hey, brother, we appreciate you, man. We'll do this again, man. Stay safe. Be safe, brother.
Thank you. Same to y'all.
All right, brother. Take it easy.
Appreciate it.